I'm Tyler Webster with the Birds, Booze, and Buds podcast.
And I'm Ben Bredigan with Onyx Map. And today we're going to talk about Sharptails. And we have Tyler, and he is the guru when it comes to Sharpies and also Huns. So we're out here at his place here in western North Dakota.
Yep.
And had a great time walking around today. And I mean, it just gives me goosebumps. It was so much fun.
It was a good day.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how we find Sharpies and what we're going to look for, how to use the Onyx Map web map and also the app to find these birds, what we're going to look for. So I'm going to a new state. I'm coming out to North Dakota for the first time. I don't know anything about Sharpies.
Sure.
Where do we start? Where do we find an area to even chase them?
Right. So for me, is what I'm going to be looking for is I'm going to go to my app and I'm going to start looking for topography changes. Is going to be a big one. Sharptails are a bird that really appreciate rolling, unbroken virgin prairie, short grass prairie, and so the topography layer and the hybrid layer are going to be very key. I'm going to be looking for ridge lines and contours in the fields, and I'm going to be looking for generally when you find these little potholes and different colored grass and bushes on here, you can actually identify them. And you can actually you can save a lot of time and a lot of miles just by pulling up this app and pulling it up on your computer. And you can see these different color changes in the fields where the color changes, like when you see the dark green stuff, that's going to be the lower spots where there's going to be a lot of water. It's going to be taller cover. It's going to be not necessarily sharptail cover, but as what you can see though are on these ridge tops and these the lighter color lines. That is what that's going to tell me, is that's going to be those areas that I'm going to be focusing on. Those are going to be the tops of the hills with the right height grass. The height of the grass is going to be critical, which is going to be something that is going to vary from year to year based on cattle grazing and many other things. But when you actually get there and you look at the map, you can see the bushes. You can kind of identify even what sort of bushes they are based on the kind of the clumps and the color. Like the ones that Ben's pointing at right now, those are very likely going to be either chokecherry bushes or plum bushes. And sharptails absolutely love both of those berries. In fact, we were talking about that today when we were out there, and we found grouse feathers in them. We didn't actually find any grouse in them today, but they will be in there later on this year.
It seemed like every time we went by a bush, one of the dogs got super birdy.
Yeah. One of the things that people make a big mistake on is they don't adjust with the seasons as well. So on this particular walk that we got the track set up on, we did move some birds, as you can see by the icons that we have up here. But what we were missing is this time of the year, we're out here in end of August, and early season sharptails are very reliant on soft-bodied insects, grasshoppers specifically. So if you're out in a piece of cover and you're not seeing a lot of grasshoppers, you're probably not going to see any birds. Is what this field did have was loads and loads of berries. It had rose hips. It had chokecherries, like I said. We found a plum bush that was hanging with plums. And as what those birds will do is they're going to transition as the grasshoppers die after we get a frost. They're going to go from eating those grasshoppers to relying mostly on these berries throughout the rest of the fall. So even though we did end up finding one brood of about 5 birds on this particular walk and one big lone male up on a ridgeline, this is a spot I'm going to come back to in about a month and a half after we've had a couple of frosts, and I guarantee you it's going to have a bunch of birds in it.
Yeah, it was really interesting, looking at the just diversity of cover. When I first started hunting Sharpies, it'd be like, all right, let's go find the biggest sea of grass.
Right.
And that's not the case.
People that are hunting Sharptails for the first time, they have the vision of like pheasant CRP stuck in their head.
Yeah.
That is not proper Sharptail cover. You can occasionally find them in there, and later on in the year when it gets cold out and there's some snow on the ground, they will move to thicker cover. But is what I always tell people when they're asking me is if you're expecting to flush a pheasant, you are in the wrong type of cover.
Yeah.
It is too thick, it is too deep. And so when I pull up to a spot, I'm looking for not a monoculture of grass. I want to see a bunch of different colors. I want to see greens and flowers, wildflowers are a really good key.
Yep, and really like the biggest thing that stuck out to me in my mind when we were looking at a number of different properties is just the biggest thing was if I look on the web map, and you can even see over on this side of the road, it's like there's the tan, there's the dark green, the light green. It's just you zoom in, there's bushes. So and obviously topography involved in there too. So that was just really eye opening. That that is prime Sharpie habitat.
Yeah, if when I'm trying to explain to a new person what it looks like, I could take a picture of this property, which we did, and flew the drone over. And if you find something that looks even close to that, you are in really good Sharptail cover, because this would be one of the most pristine pieces of Sharptail property that I've ever been on.
Yeah. So obviously we're in North Dakota here. Say I'm going to Montana, South Dakota, going to Nebraska.
Sure.
How does this kind of hold true in your experience? Because you've had a chance to chase them all across the country.
The topography change is certainly going to hold true. And the topography change, as well as the not tall grass. They call it the short grass prairie for a reason. You're going to be looking for less than knee-deep grass. It's going to be thick like carpet. It's going to be tangly. It's going to trip you a little bit. And if you find that in the Sandhills of Nebraska or in Montana, you're going to be in the right spot. Now, in those other states, one of the things that I do that we will show on a different map here is that there's going to be, like Montana is a really good example of it. They have a lot of alfalfa fields, and so the alfalfa fields always produce a lot of insects. And a lot of the guys that go to Montana, you can absolutely scout alfalfa fields on here. And there's a little bit less of the short grass prairie over there. It's been a lot more broken. But yeah, if you see anything like this, and certainly the topography change, you do not want to be walking on flat ground. You should, at several times in your hunt, you should be winded from going up a hill trying to get close to a dog.
Plenty of that today.
Yeah.
Let's say you're scouting a new area.
Sure.
Not by your house, in your prime area. What are the best layers for locating, good Sharptail habitat and actually getting on those pieces of property?
So the two layers that I always have on all my maps, no matter what state I'm in, is going to be the landowner layer, and it's also going to be the public land access layer. On this particular piece, you can see right here, we were actually on private land, but it butts up to a piece of North Dakota State Trust land. So here in North Dakota, our laws are a little bit different than any other state in the West. We have a no trespass law that has a presumption of it being not posted. So unlike in Montana or South Dakota, where you have to have permission from a landowner to access any piece of land if it's not public, we don't have that here. In North Dakota, it has to be either posted on a corner post or on the gate of a field. And so I'm always going to be looking at those landowner layers in North Dakota specifically, because if I see a person who the person who owns this piece actually owns a lot of land up here, and he doesn't post this particular piece. So what that's going to tell me is if this piece isn't posted, I'm going to look for him in other areas, and the chances of me going to another area that looks similar to this in the e-scouting, chances are I'm going to be able to access that piece as well.
Exactly.
And it seems like really good Sharptail cover usually butts up to some sort of North Dakota State Trust land or refuge or waterfowl production area, because it seems like those trust lands are more cattle pasture. They're rented out to grazing. They're a little bit more rolling prairie. They're not really farmable pieces of land for the most part. And so when I see North Dakota trust land and I see it dotted with little pockets like this and ridge tops, it's going to be a piece that I'm going to absolutely go and explore.
Well, it was we had a super fun day, and I learned a ton about Sharpie habitat and where to find them, how to use the map to find them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And be sure to stick around for part 2 so we can learn about finding Huns.
My favorite bird.
Which that was a riot today.